Hi, this is Billie Beene here with another segment of Truth by Billie Beene, episode 314. Today's date, April 18, 2022. Some of my sources are God in the Bible, Patriot subscribers, Regis, Tremblay, A Chrstoferou, Alexander Mercouris, Joel Skousen, ShariRaye, Judy Byington, an interview by Nino Rodriquez, David Nino Rodriquez of Gary Wayne, and others. So let's get started. We'll be covering Ukraine, an update, Giants, and May. And I'd like to say thanks, like, subscribe, and share. I have a subscribe button in the lower right corner of my screen. And I'd like to say welcome to all 50 states, including Alaska, Hawaii, the First Nations, Cherokee, Navajo, Hopi, Chickasaw, Mohawk, Apache, First Nation, Pitt River, California, Mohegans, Yakama Nation in Washington State, Potawatomi in the Midwest in Oklahoma, Ojibwe Nation in northern Minnesota, a proud people who want peace and justice, Choctaw, Abenaki Tribe, Cheyenne, Massanutten Pequots, Blackfoot in Montana, Spokane, and Colville. And I'd like to say welcome to the nations of Canada, England, France, Ireland, Philippines, South Africa, Netherlands, Indonesia, Scotland, Germany, Switzerland, New Zealand, Maldives, Nepal, Norway, Australia, Chile, Thailand, Belgium, Mexico, Brazil, Russia, Panama, Guam, a U.S. territory, Jamaica, an Icelander living in Spain, and other people in Spain. Wales in the UK, Sweden, Italy, Puerto Rico, a U.S. territory, Romania, Bermuda, Bahamas, British territories, Morocco, Argentina, Northern Marianas Island, a U.S. territory located close to Australia and New Zealand, Denmark, Bolivia, Uganda, Iceland, Serbia, Bulgaria, Mauritius, a small nation off of Africa, and the newest, Ukraine, the Czech Republic, Poland, Costa Rica, and Malta. So let's get started. And what's happening in Ukraine? And I hope that everybody had a wonderful Easter weekend. It was great for us, and I understand some people in some parts of the world are celebrating Easter today. So we say Happy Easter to you also. Okay. We're hearing mainstream media try to prop up the deep state. When we know the shadow U.S. government and the shadow NATO are giving instructions to the really brave Ukrainian soldiers and military and telling them to fight to the death, which will serve the propaganda objectives of the shadow deep state, who considers the Ukrainian military, the mercenaries fighting there, and of course the shadow NATO that they don't want to come out and be known by the public as expendables. So, this is what's going on. Now, Alex Chrstoferou, he's a great journalist, is bringing this out that the British Special Forces, who had been in Kiev, they left briefly at the end of February and early March. Well, they're now back, and they're doing training for the Ukrainian military, I guess the part that's still in Kiev, on some anti-tank weapons. And now we're hearing on the night of April 15 across Ukraine, Russia put out 800 strikes. Russia is now currently striking all over Ukraine and other areas. Here's some new information coming out about the Muska, the ship supposedly that Ukraine sank. Now there's some new information coming out. It had been located close to the coast off of Odessa. Now, there was a radio intercept by Russia, and they could hear. There were also radio intercepts coming out of Poland. Russia evacuated their crew of 500, and Russia is putting out the story that there was an internal fire, while Ukraine is saying they hit it with 2 missiles using drones. Now, there is some opposition coming from the Pentagon, and it appears that there is pushback from the Pentagon against the Ukrainian military putting out the stories that they use drones, or some are speculating that maybe Ukraine did use drones on this ship against the direction of the Pentagon. So that just simply bolsters the growing belief that the direction of the Ukrainian military and the military actions that are taking place versus Russia is coming from the Pentagon, the shadow part of the Pentagon, and the shadow NATO direction. Okay. Now we're hearing more about Medvedchuk. Victor, who was a political prisoner by the actor Zelensky, and supposedly he was going to be used by the Ukrainian government to exchange Medvedchuk for the U.S. Lieutenant General Roger Clothier, who's been captured by Russia, and the wife of Victor Medvedchuk has been pleading with, she wanted first Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, to intervene, and now she's going to Boris Johnson, the leader of Britain. And what's coming out now, also from the shadow part of the U.S. Defense Department, this is Deputy Secretary of Defense Hicks, says, oh yeah, the shadow part of the U.S. government's going to load up ML-270 nuke launchers and send them to Ukraine. So we in the United States are receiving propaganda from our own government. So that's going on. So as far as we know, Victor Medvedchuk is still being held. All right. Now, we understand that Russia has neutralized all 3 major fuel depots for Ukraine. Those have been taken out. They have taken out 300 tanks that Poland was trying to bring in. And Russia is saying that they have taken out 2,000 plus tanks and armored vehicles, 300 in the last 2 weeks. So those are some of the numbers going on. And we have heard that Ukraine was trying to send troops. The last we heard, they were rounding up children, males 14 years and up, to send to the front line. And we understand that they did send 1 group, and Russia has neutralized 40% of that group. We don't have a total number. Now, Zelensky is alleging that only 3,000 Ukrainian military plus have been killed and 700 are taken as prisoners of war. Russia is stating that they took in Mariupol alone 1,600 Ukrainians as POWs, and that the Donbass People's Republic military is holding about 3,000 Ukraine military and mercenaries and other groups as prisoners of war. So those numbers are not. Okay, Regis Tremblay, an American expat living in Crimea, interviewed Dr. Kousin, who was a military knowledgeable. He's a political scientist, acts as a spokesperson for the Russian government, says on the night of April 16, two FABs, these are bunker busting bombs, were dropped over the steel mill in Mariupol. So that's going on. Now, that happened on the 16th. Today is the 18th. 17, 16. All right. So they dropped the bombs. Now, they offered the individuals who are still inside the steel mill, which is numbering, we understand, about 2,000 Ukraine. This would be military, mercenaries, NATO plus. We know there's U.S. and French there. Okay. 2,000 still inside the steel mill. So Russia dropped the two bunker busting bombs on the 16th, on the night. The next day, they gave an offer of surrender to these forces still inside the steel mill from 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. Moscow time. That has passed. Today is the 18th. So, multiple sources are saying they don't know exactly what is the strategy that Russia is going to use to eliminate and destroy and take out the steel mill. More bunker busting bombs are tried to flood it. But at any rate, the offer was made by Russia to these thousands of troops inside the steel mill. And then they communicated back to Kiev, to the alleged Ukrainian government. They wanted to surrender. And the alleged Ukrainian government in Kiev come back to the pinned down soldiers who are, we understand, without food and water and ammo, and said, die for Ukraine. And it's believed now that the deep state operated out of the shadow U.S. government and shadow U.S. military and the shadow NATO nations want to play it up like these individuals are willing to die for freedom and die for Ukraine, when it is believed that their surrender would be very embarrassing for the deep state and for the U.S. shadow government and the U.S. shadow military and the NATO shadow part. So, yeah, just go ahead and die and let Russia take you out. It's better for our mainstream narrative that we are constantly pumping out instead of allowing these people the honorable route of surrendering. All right. Now, we understand on the night of the 16th, that was the night Russia dropped the 2 bunker-busting bombs on the steel mill. There was a group of 200. There was also a separate group of 150, maybe the next night, who tried to reach the steel mill. Of course, Russia neutralized both of those groups. Okay, what's going on in the front line? So we have Luhansk, Donetsk, this is the Donbass. Here's Odessa, Mariupol. There's a front line here. This is Kiev. Of course, we have in this area Kharkiv. And we understand the American expat Gonzalo Lira is broadcasting from Kharkiv. And we understand that we have a front line here, and the Ukraine military and mercenaries and NATO number about 80 to 120,000. Now we understand that Russia had brought in 60,000. That was reserves a couple of days ago. And that the total Russian numbers now includes the Russian military, the Czech Republic, and other groups that are fighting with Russia, is somewhere around 250,000. Now, of this number, it's believed that at the beginning of the war, which would have been about February 24, that Ukraine had 250,000 military mercenaries, NATO plus. Now it's believed that at least 10% of these forces have been killed or they're taken as prisoners of war. So the numbers are not working out. Here we have Izium, we have Slovansk and Kramatorsk. The strategy by the Russian military, they moved a lot of, when Mariupol, they gained 90 or 98% control of the residential areas of Mariupol a few days ago. They're still just fighting individuals inside the steel mill. They began to move their troops behind the line. They're also bringing in these troops. Now we have also the Donbass People's Republic military, which is believed to be about 50,000. So we see that the Ukraine troops and mercenaries are being gradually outnumbered. Now, it's also important to know that on April 16, the same night of which the 2 bunker-busting bombs were dropped on the steel mill in Mariupol, that a formal letter was sent from Russia, from President Putin, to the State Department, to the U.S. government. Stop sending weapons, or there could be unpredictable consequences, which is an extraordinary formal move forward between 2 nations. All right. Now, the numbers for the Russian front line is believed to be, now we have another source for the numbers, that this has gone down to 100, 80 to 100, that they have Ukraine military, 59,000. The rest are mercenaries or NATO or whatever. And that Russian troops, yes, had come in from Crimea, and they've almost completely circled the front line. All right. Now we have some information from Joel Skousen, who is a political and military analyst. And he's saying that in the event, he's enumerating the forces that are in play now and stating that the deep state is in different groups. Russia, China, the U.S., and European, and that they have controlling groups above them, and they're each trying to gain more of the world. And Joel is saying, based on his knowledge of the history of nuclear treaties and agreements in the U.S., I think that was Clinton who put this forth or signed some kind of paperwork that the U.S. would absorb a first strike. So Joel is saying if a nuke was coming in 15 minutes before it came in, there would be an EMP. So that's coming out. So now, different forces and different groups are saying different things. It's hard to know exactly what is the truth. Okay. So now we have also the United States has been sending in weapons to the Ukraine, and Alex Chrstoferou believes that they come in and the generals usually sell a big percentage of them on the black market. They never reach the troops. Okay. Now, this is coming forth. Alex Chrstoferou is bringing this out. This is also another move that nations make before other things. Okay. On April 15, Europe expels 19 Russian diplomats. And on April 15, Russia expels 18 European diplomats. Alex Chrstoferou, yes, he's correct with history. Nations make these moves before they go into bigger pushback. All right. And that Germany is going to buy $2.5 billion worth of weapons and give them to Ukraine. Well, I wonder if Germany believes that once they give all these weapons to Ukraine to use against Russia, that Russia's just going to continue to send oil and gas to Germany. And we understand that's a major part of the heating and electricity for the German people. What are these leaders thinking? All right. Now, we have in Mariupol, in the steel mill. So far we have 2,000 Ukrainian military plus who have been told by the shadow Ukrainian government, fight to the death or die for Ukraine, because you are expendable. This steel mill has 8 levels to it that go down and underground areas. So exactly how Russia is going to take it out is not known. I mean, flooding is one option. So, yeah. So the people there representing the shadow U.S. government, the shadow U.S. military, and the shadow Ukraine government, and the shadow, I mean, they're all shadows. Not elected and put in place by citizen patriots anywhere. All right. So, yeah, okay. So this is another option that could be used in Mariupol, is to use vacuum bombs. So that would go down, create a vacuum, and then draw everything up. All right. Now we have more reports from NATO. This is from on April 15. A spokesperson, Andriy Kilmov, of the United Russian Party, so this is coming from Russia, regarding NATO. NATO has been caught working with the Ukraine military. They have verified that NATO personnel have been captured, and that they have also mercenaries captured from Asia, Africa, Great Britain, the US, and more, and that public trials will begin soon. So that's coming out. Now we have, there's a lot of controversy. It's coming out from multiple sources that the mercenaries are not military and they're not subject to international law. And another British mercenary has been captured, Sean Penner, who is 48. And he maintains that he was deceived, and there are sources saying that part of the shadow Great Britain government, through their official offices, tried to recruit young men to go to Ukraine as freedom fighters. And this Sean Penner says, we were deceived, because when we get here, we understand it's all under the auspices of a group that practices the philosophy of Germany of World War II. And he wanted to surrender and was not allowed to. All right. So now we're having Russia is putting this out with regard to Ukraine losses. Zelensky, the actor, is saying 2,000 to 3,000 Ukraine military plus have been killed. All right, so the Russian government is saying 23,367. They're giving an exact number of losses of people who have been killed, who were fighting for Ukraine. All right. So now Russia controls the territory inside Ukraine that is 2 times the size of Britain. Actually, the whole of Ukraine is 2 times the size of Texas. So Russia is now in control of a large majority of the nation. And another area near Odessa, Kousin, has put up Russian flags and are a breakaway area. They want to become independent and align with Russia. Okay. So now we have this information coming out. The Russian Ministry of Defense is putting out this number, that the number of mercenaries, that would include NATO plus, that came to Ukraine is 68,024, and they came from 63 nations. I find the numbers they're putting out amazing, and this includes 1,000 from Poland, 1,500 from the U.S., Romania, Canada, 300 from Britain and Georgia, 193 from the Turkey-controlled Syria, or ISIS, yeah. So it just includes those groups. Now, this information is coming out about another ethnic cleansing. This is by Turkey, who attacked inside Iraq. And they were attacking the Kurds. And this is another group that the Turkey and other nations have been trying to ethnically cleanse for decades. And so, yeah, They went into Iraq and attacked at Medina Zap and Vashia Bazyam to destroy the headquarters of the PKK, the Kurdish People's Headquarters. Okay. So now we have reported by A Chrstoferou that Zelensky today on April 18 is asking the G7 nations they need immediately $50 billion. And they're going to be needing that too for every 6 months or a year for many years to maintain Ukraine. Okay. Now we're understanding, the mainstream media is trying to span that the people, the Ukrainian military and the Mercs and the NATO people locked down and the steel mill or, freedom fighters. No, they want to surrender. They're not allowed to. The direction from the puppet Zelensky government to the Azov group, that's inside the steel mill, the quasi-civilian military group that actively practices the philosophy from Germany of World War II. Their directions to them are to shoot and kill any Ukraine soldiers, any NATO people, any mercenaries inside that steel mill who want to surrender. You take your gun out and you do them in. All right. Because if they come out and give out all the information of things that have been going on, it's not going to look good for us. The shadow Ukraine government, the shadow U.S. government, the shadow U.S. military, the shadow NATO. No, we don't want truth coming out. All right. Now we have this is from Alexander Mercouris. His April 18 report today. Russia withdrew around Kiev a few weeks ago, but Scott Ritter, Marine U.S. military analyst, had said that was part of their strategy. Circle Kiev, keep them locked down there, a part of their Russia's strategy for shaping the battlefield. So the troops who are in place in Kiev to hold Kiev don't go to the front line. Now, and that was celebrated as a victory by Ukraine. All right, so now Mariupol, the steel mill, Russia has, according to Alexander Mercouris, today's report, relentlessly been bombing them. They have passed up their offer of surrender. And he's giving that a second group of 150 tried to reach the steel mill. I think that was last night or so, and they were taken out by Russia. Okay, in Donbass, in the front line, we have Russia fighting. We have the Donbass People's Republic military, and we have the Czech military. And they've collected at Izium. They are pushing toward Slovatsk. It's the Ukraine don't have much chance of winning against the numbers that Russia has put in place, and the resupply of reinforcing troops, food and water and ammo and other things. All those resupply lines to the Ukraine military and others has been cut off by Russia. Now, these are some numbers that are coming out that along the front line, Ukraine losses are 10,000 killed or taken prisoner on a daily basis. And I believe the fighting along the front line has been going on, but most heavily in the last few days once Russia had secured the majority of Mariupol and moved the troops. So this 10,000 of Ukraine military mercenaries, shadow NATO, at 10,000 per day for the last few days sounds reasonable. And the Ukraine military who is fighting now on this front line are reported to be reserves, that there are no more career Ukrainian military people available. And from February 24 to March 25, Russia took out of the Ukraine military mercenaries plus 14,000. Then on April 16, you could add another 10,000 that were taken out. I'm not sure if this is the front line or Mariupol. I have to believe this was probably the front line. So they're saying the losses for Ukraine are about 24,000. Now, they're saying that the Ukraine originally had 250,000, 10% of killed. So that's about 24,000. Okay. So the Ukrainian figures they're giving out is that they've only lost 3,000. So there are pictures and videos coming out to substantiate the losses. So we need to pray for Ukraine and for those Ukraine, the career military people and the mercenaries who it appears were enticed and lied to about going to Ukraine, what they would be fighting for, and surely I believe the NATO, the shadow NATO people there were also misled. So we just need to pray for everybody, and not to mention the civilian losses and destruction of infrastructure that's going on. Okay, now we're going to move to sci-fi. Okay, David Nino Rodriquez interviewed Gary Wayne. Gary is a longtime Bible scholar and has written an excellent reference book, Genesis 6. One of the first books I've seen, because I'd done a lot of research myself, and so, but I would always come to spots, and there would be lapses in the history, and how do things go together? Yeah, because Gary Wayne spent 30 years researching this, talking about Genesis 6 and the Nephilim and the giants, and then able to piece together the different royal lines. Now, he's coming out with a new book in the near future. So he's talking about some Nephilim and the giants. Now, this word Nephilim, we heard, this has come out from Stephen Benoon, maybe in the last couple of years. Stephen Israeli News Live, can read ancient Hebrew, and he had distinguished, he said there's two words in, Hebrew. Nephilim means fallen angel. So this is fallen angel. Nephilim. Nephilim is the hybrid, which is fallen angel mating with human, making a hybrid. And then giants describes the Nephilim. Now, Gary Wayne is bringing this information out about the alleged height, and Stephen Benoon has also been coming out with some research on this, how tall they were. So we have different heights given. Before the flood, they're talking about 40 to 60 feet, and then after the flood, 9 to 12 feet. And Gary is bringing this out. 4 different groups. We have some with red hair, green eyes. They have white skin. Then we have some with black hair that's very curly and dark eyes and darker skin. Then we have some that are very blonde and have blue eyes and very white skin, like the alleged group that the Germans of World War II looked up to, the Aryans, be this group. Now, there are other species of Kat Kerr had come out with the information that there were multiple species, thousands of species of the fallen angels. So these are just like the 3 main groups. Now, Gary Wayne is bringing this out, that we have these different species of the fallen angels and on earth, and then they're hybrid, mixed with humans, are on earth, and they have different physical characteristics, and they also control different political governments and militaries. This is a fight between the fallen angels and some of the different groups they control. We have Russia, China, the US, Europe, plus. So we have different groups inside all of these. And much of what we're seeing in Ukraine is these different groups being pushed against one another. Now, where does God come in? Oh, yeah, and in the Bible, he's talking about this, supports the multiple species. We have Rephaim, we have Anak, then we have all the ites, parasites, and hepatites, and a lot of different groups in the Bible. These were Nephilim, giants. Now, we're hearing about, and that was in, Afghanistan, in Kandahar. Yeah, we have pictures of that, of the U.S. military taking out one of the giants, had red hair, and light blue skin, actually. And we're hearing about blue skin species also. Now, Gary Wayne is bringing this out. I'm assuming he's doing research along these lines too. So giants, in the past, after the flood and before the flood, and he's talking about them being in stasis. Now for me, this would be a direct tie to the Ark ships that are being found. So what is the relationship between the giants, these giants in stasis, who are on the Ark ships? So I'll be doing more in-depth research for you. All right. So, sci-fi. We're living in a new world, aren't we? Let's go to look ahead. Now, the Chinese elders, who control a lot of money, and they would be one of these groups too, that we see that there are different groups in charge. All right. Will not allow, so they're not going to allow Nasara to go forward as long as JB, the actor, is still in office. And according to Benjamin Fulford a couple of weeks ago, they want President Trump reinstated. And according to the information Gene Decode had, the probability of him being reinstated in May is 50% up. So May is looking good. Now, we can tell that some of these things are most likely going to happen because we're hearing about the Hunter Biden laptop being presented on mainstream media. I'm amazed at mainstream media actually having some truth come out. And we also know that Russia had put out that in one of the biolabs in Ukraine, they found a second laptop that belonged to Hunter Biden. And so that's being put out, and it had on it 50,000 incriminating pictures of leaders of global corporations and government. So, all right. So now the deep state is trying to push all the militaries and governments into World War III via Ukraine and Russia. This is not going to work, according to the sources coming out from, we know we have God, we have President Trump, who's recognized by the U.S. military as the commander-in-chief, and I understand now he currently, with the resolution of who is and what is Ramona Dadulo, that she's out of the picture, and that President Trump is now functioning also as the commander-in-chief of Canada. All right, so, and the alliance, and we have President Putin, and we have Chairman Xi, and we have Prime Minister Modi, and we have up to, I believe, 38 governments and militaries. But these agreements also extend to 209 out of 214 nations. So that's going on. So we're pushing, and we have had, help in cleaning the earth from some non-human species. So that's been cleaned, and now we're just cleaning up the minions on the earth. That would include the ones who are, it was the shadow U.S. government that put in place the biolabs in Ukraine to develop viruses and pathogens to take out certain genetic groups. The one they've been working on are Slavs, basically white Christians. So, yeah, that's going on. Now, God is in charge. So, I believe the situation in Ukraine and Russia is going to be resolved. These individuals in the steel mill are going to have to be neutralized one way or another. Russia is going to have to put forth some type of plan and take over. Most of the people in Ukraine want to be under Russia now. Looks like about 2/3 of Ukraine. So that would be one resolution of the biolabs, but now we understand there's like 360 biolabs and 36 nations. Okay, we the people, through good militaries, are going to have to go into those nations and take those biolabs out. And I believe that that will be part of our future, and that we will have peace and prosperity, and that we will bring about Nasara, and that we will have President Trump back in May. So, ShariRaye is bringing this out. In Wisconsin, oh, we can hardly believe it. There were some questions about the event in November of 2020. So that's being investigated. Now she's bringing out this news. The MSNBC and the group of 25 to 54-year-old American citizen patriots that they have lost 65%. That's your middle class. And MSNBC has lost 65% of this group. Well, that doesn't make you a good vehicle for advertisers. They want to appeal to the middle class. And then Sherry is saying, I bet above 54, the age of 54, that they've lost about 98% of that group. So we'll say we look forward to May and a wonderful future. And we need to pray for Ukraine and Russia. So here's a short prayer. First, the cleansing prayer modeled by Jean Decode. We remove permission to be in us, on us, around us, on earth, off-world, any dimension, any person, place, or thing not of God, any assemblage of fallen angels, any AI, nanobot, and other form of tech, any non-terrestrial species, spirit, thought form, operating system, genetic overlay, past, present, and future. That's right. We say get away from us in the name of Jesus. Now this prayer is third in the Veil series, and the name of it is Enter In, and it's based on King James Version, Hebrew chapter 6 and Revelation 5. We have an anchor for our souls, Jesus Christ, whom many call Yeshua. We are anchored and bound to our God through him, Jesus, whom many call Yeshua. We are unmovable. We are unshakable. We turn neither to the left nor the right, but remain steadfast in our paths upon earth. We can walk in liberty, seeing that past veils have been removed, because we have a high priest after the order of Melchizedek, even our kinsman redeemer, Jesus Christ, whom many call Yeshua. He, God the Father, has made us his sons and daughters, and we are kings, priests, and prophets through our kinsman redeemer, our high priest, Jesus Christ, whom many call Yeshua. And we are prophets because Jesus said, my words are prophecy. When we speak his words, we prophesy. And we thank you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and the Son, Jesus, whom many call Yeshua, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And I say to my family and friends, remain steady out there, continue to pray. God is in charge, and he is on the move. I love you, and I'll see you soon.